Welcome, everybody. How is everybody? My name is Nastasia Generalova. I'm a 7-time U.S. Rhythmic National Team member. I attend Columbia University, and I'm a She's the First ambassador. Welcome to our second quarterly town hall. This is our chance to bring our team together, talk about impact, and answer any questions you may have as a member of the She's the First community. We'll be monitoring the chat, so feel free to drop your questions there at any time during the session, and we will answer them at the end. Some very exciting news, things that have happened since our last town hall meeting. On March 8th, we celebrated International Women's Day with the Mentors Make It Happen campaign, highlighting the important role that mentors play in girls' lives. Posts with the hashtag were seen nearly 12 million times, and supporters like you interacted with the campaign more than 100,000 times. And thanks to a matching donation from our partner Bobby Brown's Pretty Powerful Fund, we welcomed many new members to the front row, our monthly giving community. We also launched our Listening to Girls Toolkit for community-based organizations. She's the First partnered with MAIA Impact in Guatemala and developed a step-by-step guide on how to effectively run focus groups to integrate girls' voices into programming. This free resource is available for grassroots organizations and includes a case study, a video guide, and sample questioning technique to help organizations feel more confident as they run their own focus groups. More than 100 organizations have accessed the toolkit to date. Last but not least, She's the First published a massive retrospective report last month, reflecting on the last decade of impact and how we've grown and evolved as an organization. There's a lot to dig into, but one section of the report that is particularly important to advocates like all of you who are watching is our focus on ethical storytelling. To talk more about this, I'm excited to introduce She's the First programs manager, Alvi Rashid. Yay.
Thank you so much, Nastasia, for hosting, and we're going to be hearing more from her later this evening. So thank you so much. So hi, everyone. As she mentioned, my name is Alvi, and I'm the programs manager at She's the First, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about ethical storytelling. So I recognize that some of you are super familiar with our work, and some of you are new to this community. So before we begin, I want to briefly reintroduce She's the First. So our mission is to work with women-led and grassroots organizations to make sure girls globally are educated, respected, and heard. We take a two-pronged approach to doing this. On one hand, we work to ensure that we are strengthening ecosystems for girls and girl-led girl organizations. So we do that through training, funding, and creating curriculum. On the other side, we do that by engaging girl-led advocacy through campus chapters, campaigns, and toolkits. So our top priority has been and always will be to serve girls first. To ensure that all girls are experiencing their fullest human rights, it's our responsibility that we're representing them with dignity and partnering with them to tell their stories. Today, we'll be sharing with you on how we do that as an organization and tips on how you can be a more ethical storyteller. And if you're a girl watching today, we hope that what we share will help you share your own story in a way that celebrates your power. Storytelling allows us to share our impact and introduce the social justice issues we're passionate about to new people. For many years at She's the First, we used a sponsorship model as a way to communicate our impact to our community. Essentially, an organization will ask people to donate in exchange to being connected to a person, and in our case, girls, that they are sponsoring. The sponsorship approach is an effective fundraising and storytelling tool. But today we're going to explore if it's the best way to communicate our work as activists who are working for girls' rights. Together, we have a responsibility to uplift and amplify girls' stories with dignity. Unfortunately, it's still too common to describe girls in an infantilizing way. You might be familiar with what this looks and sounds like. Girls are portrayed in their lowest moments with a caption that only focuses on the things that she doesn't have. We need to flip the script because that serves nobody, least of all girls. This narrative can also reinforce negative stereotypes of where they're from or their identities, whether from LA or Liberia. To ensure that all girls are experiencing their fullest human rights, it's our responsibility that we're representing them and the people and places they belong to with respect. I used to think that the way to get people's attention was to spew a bunch of facts and talk about how bad a situation was. And if you're one of those people, boy, do I have a cool fact for you. It actually doesn't work. Research shows that when we take a problems only approach, it actually deters people from engaging in our movement. Instead, when we tell stories ethically, we're aligning our external messages with our mission. And by leading with our values and focusing on the strengths of girl activists, we are reinforcing our vision for the future and that it's within our reach. We strive to show girls in their power, campus chapters in their advocacy, and community based organizations working towards our collective vision for girls. Part of this process is constantly checking in with ourselves to make sure our storytelling matches our mission, vision, and values of being anti oppressive and girl centered. As you all know, when She's the First started 10 years ago, we fundraised by asking people to sponsor a girl because we thought it was the best way to help us achieve the most success so that we can support our partners and in turn ensure girls are successful. But in actuality, the sponsorship approach in the philanthropy and global development space is steeped in inequality and colonialism. It fails girls and locally led organizations because it takes away from their agency. There were 4 realizations that helped us make the shift away from a sponsorship model. First, we realized that the sponsorship model reinforces colonial power dynamics. Typically, when we're presented with a sponsorship model, we see a girl or a child who isn't white and needs help to do a thing but can't do it because of a financial barrier. In this example, we can say she's trying to go to school. The call to action is to help her by asking someone to donate money so that she can go to school. And typically, these asks are directed to people in the West. This model sets up the girl as helpless and puts all the power on the donor in the West to save her. This sounds kind of familiar because it kind of reminds you of some forms of colonialism, actually. This savior framework is harmful to girls because it only sets them up as victims and misinforms the donor community that the girl's issues are solved when in reality, she's still navigating discrimination due to her gender and structural violence. What's more is that this approach prioritizes the donor's opinions on how money should be spent instead of the community based organizations who are the experts. We also realize that a sponsorship model is transactional. Through a donation, someone gets to buy a relationship with a girl for a year and receives her photo, bio, updates, and letters. This adds to the global objectification of girls, which essentially means that girls are being treated as things instead of humans with feelings and interests. This objectification is the complete opposite of what we believe in. That girls everywhere deserve to be educated, respected, and heard. If you want to learn more about this experience and what it feels like to be on the side of having to send in your photo and send updates and send letters, we actually had 2 girls who were formally sponsored share their experiences with us. You could check out their stories on our blog post. We'll also share that in the follow-up from today. In a typical sponsorship model, consent is super murky. Girls are sharing their photos, thoughts, and life stories with a stranger. Has anyone explained to her how her information is going to be used, who her personal letters are going to? But these are things that she's required to share to be able to participate in the program that she's in. For a while, we addressed this consent gap by providing them with the information and only sharing materials that they consented for us to share. But at the end of the day, an uncomfortable fact is that these pieces are required from girls. They're being pulled out of classes and programming to be taken photos of, to share updates, and to write letters. And many times they would share all this vulnerably and not receive a letter back acknowledging from the donors that were supporting them on what they've shared. Last but not least, a sponsorship model put an extremely heavy burden on our partners. Updating and providing information on hundreds of girls is not easy. Sometimes our partners would travel all day to get to a city where they have strong internet, and along the way they'd carry letters with them. And once they get to the city, they'll scan it, upload it, label it, and send it. For a time, we also connected donors to girls groups, which were groups of girls who met on a regular basis and co-mentored one another and talked about issues that they were experiencing and supporting one another. But even that proved to be a strain on our partners. This is definitely not the best use of their time as grassroots resource-constrained organizations. These 4 reflections helped us realize that a sponsorship model isn't the best way to show up for girls. It reinforces harmful colonial relationships, strains community-based organizations, and strips girls of their agency. To ethically tell girls' stories, we need to put them at the center. Today, we do that by sharing essays, art, and other projects that girls have decided to share with the world through our Girl Gazette. Girls get to decide if they'd like to contribute and what they'd like to cover in their communities. We offer stipends to community-based organizations so that they can translate the Girl Gazette in their local language and print it out so that girls in their communities can circulate the stories and they can learn from one another. Through the Girl Gazette and our communications, we're able to showcase girls as the heroes of their own stories. We lead with our anti-oppressive and girl-centered values and make sure everything we share externally embodies these values. In action, that means we're including girls and community-based organizations at every stage of development of a campaign. It means we're working on focusing on solutions and highlighting the work that is moving us towards our mission and our vision of the world where girls are educated, respected, and heard. This helps us avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes of girls, the places they're from, and the issues that they face. It means that we're constantly checking in to see if there are better ways to tell their stories. And most importantly of all, we're making sure that girls and community-based organizations have a complete understanding of what's happening with their information. Ethical storytelling means we're talking about solutions instead of problems, activists instead of victims, and what we believe in instead of what we're up against. We've taken these lessons and adapted them into a checklist to help guide you as you rally your community around girls' rights through storytelling. So we're going to be sending this list to you shortly after this town hall. So don't be worried. You could just listen. So when you're beginning, before you're beginning, take some time to reflect on your own privileges and the biases that you have within you. Everyone has these, and everyone has and experiences different privilege, and that's okay. But that's exactly why we need to make a conscious effort to figure out what they are so that we can actively make sure they don't seep into the stories that we tell. Next, as you start your message, kick it off with why you care about girls' rights, education, and gender equality. The people that follow you on social media or that are going to read your email, they care because you're doing it. So make sure that you take advantage of that and use that opportunity to share why it's important to you. And then they'll buy into why they should believe in your cause and support girls' rights. As you're drafting your message, ask yourself if your description will spark pride in the girl activist you're highlighting. That's a rule of thumb that we use at She's the First. And a way that you could frame it is that if in 10 years, the person that you're sharing about when she's a working professional or a mother by choice, is she going to want to share this with other people? And last but not least, on the checklist on this slide, as you're writing, check who your story is focused on. Chances are if you have a savior or a victim present in your communications, the other one is present there too. Girls, donors, and community-based organizations all play an important role in the movement for girls' rights. But make no mistake, girls are the heroes in their own lives and have to navigate everyday realities to achieve their dreams. So, as we continue on the checklist, when you are reviewing the piece that you've written or the video that you've created, make sure that it's not a solution-heavy piece. When we focus our story on a problem, we're not doing girls justice because we can't provide enough nuance in that 2-minute video or that 30-second space of caption. Or worse, when we provide more details, people aren't paying attention to the message. What that means is that we're unintentionally creating ambiguity and making space for the audience's implicit biases to fill in the blanks. That leads me to the next item on the checklist. Actively work to undo stereotypes of the people and places you're talking about. Imperialism and colonialism have left us with internalized views on what girls in community-based organizations who aren't white are capable of. Flip that script by talking about their power and their leadership role in the solution. Last but not least, the final question on the checklist is to make sure we frame the story on the solution. Remember when I shared earlier that when we focus on problems that we're doing more harm than good, either we're reinforcing negative stereotypes because we can't provide enough nuance in a caption, or we're deterring people from reading our messages because they feel uncomfortable. Well, I have good news for you to counteract both of these issues. When we lead with our vision for the future and solutions, we are once again returning power into the hands of girls and grassroots organizations because we're highlighting them as leaders. And not only that, research shows that people are more likely to engage with you when you're providing solutions and giving them something to believe in. In practice, what this looks like is that we're using terms like team up with and work together to share that community-based organizations are our peers and partners. If we're not actively doing that, we're coming across as she's the first, in the West know better and are enforcing our vision of the future on someone else, which is not the case at all. The experts are girls and community-based organizations. It's also really common to rely on terms like first world, third world, and developing countries to describe some of the places that we're working in. But who are we to have a say in that? Many of the places we're describing have civilizations that go back thousands of years and have contributed so much to the world, inventions that we're still using today. We're all privileged, but in different ways. Instead, we use terms like low and high income countries because that can be measured and has nothing to do with a country's image or perceived development. Last but not least, you're not going to see us mention sponsorship, sponsor, or scholar anywhere in our communications going back the last couple of years. Simply put, we don't do a sponsorship model anymore. Activism is a constant reflection process. We're all unlearning language and behavior that's counterproductive to our cause. We're applying these lessons to improve how we can communicate and tell stories about community-based organizations and girl activists to improve outcomes for girls everywhere. That being said, we still need to know deep inside us that this is just part of the growth process. It's important that as part of our activism, we incorporate self-compassion and kindness. We've all said, done, and posted something that may not align with who we are today. We can't take back our past, but we can definitely be thoughtful about our steps going forward. This is part of leveling up as activists. So that brings my presentation on how to be an ethical storyteller to an end. Thank you all so much for your willingness to grow alongside of us and being receptive to the lessons that we're learning. We'll share this checklist and the terms we love shortly with you afterwards so that you can refer to them going forward. I'm going to be back during Q&A, but right now I'm going to pass it on to the lovely Ananya Jain, our extraordinary Girls Advisory Council member, who's going to tell you more about upcoming opportunities for girls at STF.
Thank you, Alvi. Hi, everyone. My name is Ananya Jain, and I'm a member of the Girls Advisory Council. I'm currently a sophomore at Nova Southeastern University, and I'm in their 8-year medical program where I hope to become a doctor someday. I joined STF because I'm grateful for all the opportunities I've had, and I believe that all girls have a right to education and autonomy over their lives. I'm currently in my 2nd year on the Girls Advisory Council, and I look forward to our meetings at the end of every month. Council meetings are a very safe, welcoming space where members can freely share. When I shared my experiences with imposter syndrome in a meeting, I received a lot of great advice from members and the column anti-STF. Through my time on the council, I've also learned about STF's anti-oppressive philosophy and practices. The Girls Advisory Council itself, where girls give input and share their experiences, is a clear example of STF's commitment to anti-oppressive practices. I am most proud of contributing to the Discover Your Power journal. This journal is meant to give young girls advice about what it means to be safe and supported so they can tap into their power. I wish I had this journal when I was younger. I would have learned about enforcing boundaries, having healthy friendships, building a support system, and setting goals much sooner. I especially love the warm tone the journal is written in. It feels like a caring mentor is guiding the reader. The Girls Advisory Council application is due on June 7th, and if you identify with the experiences of girls and are under the age of 22, I encourage you to join. It's been really interesting to learn about the inner workings of STF, but above all, I really like connecting with other girls around the world and hearing about their experiences and perspectives. And now I'd like to invite Nastasia back to talk about another way that girls can get involved with She's the First.
Thanks so much, Ananya. That was amazing. The Girls Advisory Council is a fantastic way to get involved, but it's not the only way. We are so excited to introduce a new opportunity for girls everywhere. She's the First Youth Ambassadors. While the Girls Advisory Council focuses on making sure She's the First is girl-centered internally, She's the First Youth Ambassadors are the way that we make sure our voices and communication are girl-centered externally. You'll receive media training to prepare you for you to be a go-to girl for media interviews, events, public speaking opportunities on behalf of She's the First. You'll also work closely with our communications team to create content for the She's the First social media accounts that is inclusive, welcoming, and speaks directly to girls. I'll be working closely with this group, and I can't wait to see more girls from the She's the First community represented. Like the Girls Advisory Council, the application for She's the First Youth Ambassadors is open now and will close on June 7th. Check out this link in the chat to learn more about both opportunities. As you guys know, it's graduation season in the US, and this year we're celebrating more than 150 high school and college seniors from our campus chapter community. While we wish we could have attended everyone's commencement ceremony in person, we'll have to settle for cheering you on from the internet. I'm going to hand it over to She's the First co-founders Tammy Tibbetts and Christen Brandt with a special message for the class of 2021.
Woohoo! Thanks, Nastasia.
Congratulations, class of 2021. We are so proud of you. So for the last year plus, the She's the First team has been working from home, much like you've been taking your classes from home. So it was a very happy occasion, an excuse about a month or so ago for the New York staff of She's the First, us two, Katie and Alvi, to reunite in our Manhattan office space that we missed so much. We hadn't been there together since March of 2020. And we had a very important task to do that day, to send graduation cords out to our class of 2021 grads in the campus community. And as you saw by those opening slides, there were a lot of them to mail. So we were all sitting on the office floor, stuffing little teal bubble envelopes and writing notes by hand, printing out labels, and listening to 90s music, the music of our girlhood. And I'm well aware that you weren't alive then, but we're getting old. But because we know you, we're still pretty cool. And it was just like a flashback to the early days of She's the First, which was literally founded on the floor. And normally we might call upon helpful interns and volunteers to help us out with these kind of tasks, but they're all remote now. So we all stepped in. And you know what? It ended up being such a rewarding thing for us to do because we got to see each and every one of your names and many of your plans for after graduation that you submitted in the survey. And we were reminded just how far and wide the She's the First campus program has grown over the last decade. In the early days, we were sending out envelopes to just a handful of chapters that we can count on both hands, and that is no longer the case. There are so many of you. So if we have any practical piece of advice as you go out into the world, perhaps it is this. Appreciate those small moments because they are almost always part of a bigger story and a bigger vision. Even stuffing envelopes has a lot of value to offer if we pay attention. So for those of you who are getting entry-level jobs and being assistants, just remember, sometimes the grunt work is teaching you something more important. Most of all, it is an honor for She's the First to not only be part of your attire on graduation day, but to have been a part of your life these last few or 4 or more years. The class of 2021 will always have an extra special place in our hearts. And trust me, I'm not going to come back on here next year and say the same thing to the class of 2022. We really mean it, because you are the ones who didn't quit on She's the First. You never gave up, even when you had every legitimate reason to do so. No one, not the two of us, would have faulted you for taking a step back from She's the First if life got too stressful or depressing or anxious during a global pandemic. Your mental and physical health, your family's well-being, that had to be your top priority on top of your schoolwork. And yet, you still found the time to give She's the First your all.
It's true. The campus community came together like never before. You held virtual meetings, you brainstormed over FaceTime. Your creativity really blew us away. You were hosting Sneeze the First campaigns, you were hosting Zumba classes, and all of those videos you created and all of the votes you put in for Project for Awesome ended up raising more than $26,000 for She's the First this year alone. We imagine that it must feel scary headed into this next big adventure, whether for college, for grad school, a gap year, a new job, the unknown. And that unknown can be scary. And we know how that feels because these last 4 years or so has really been a season of growth for She's the First. Over the course of the last few years, we've celebrated our 10th anniversary. We opened our Nairobi office. We launched the Global Girls Bill of Rights. She's the First has grown into a more progressive, anti-oppressive, unapologetically feminist, and girl-centered organization. It's been a season of exponential impact for She's the First, and the campus community has been our foundation of support every step of the way. You use your voices to advocate with us for all girls everywhere, because whether they're Black or brown or gay or trans or an immigrant or a refugee or Indigenous or poor or just trying to make it as a girl in the year 2021, every girl everywhere deserves the full experience of her rights. You stood with us in that belief. And with your support and allyship, She's the First has grown into an organization that is beyond our wildest dreams. And so now, as you all prepare to take your next big step into the world, know that She's the First is here for you too. This whole community is here for you every step of the way. So give yourself the space to step into a future that's beyond your wildest dreams. You might not know yet where that's going to lead, but one thing we do know is that you will make an impact. You already have. Now you are part of this amazing league of She's the First girls and allies around the world who we are so proud to call graduates and alumni. Congratulations from the bottom of our hearts. And please stay in touch on social media and beyond. And with that, we'll welcome back Nastasia.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Christen and Tam. We really appreciate and love you. And congratulations to the whole class of 2021. It's been a very difficult year, and I'm very proud of everybody, especially coming from a student myself. It's difficult. So very proud of everyone who graduated.
All right.
And if you haven't sent us your grad photos yet, please remember to send them via DM, email, whatever you want. We want to see you guys in your gowns. Now it's time to hear from you. So I'm going to welcome Alvi and Ananya back to answer your questions about anything you've heard about tonight. Yes. So our first question to Alvi is, are there internship opportunities with She's the First for the fall semester? Will they be remote or in person?
That is a great question. So yes, we have internships all year round, and our next cycle is this fall. And we have applications open for our advocacy intern position and one for a community engagement position. And so you can check out the description on our website. But if you're interested in applying, we recommend applying by July so that we can review it for the next cycle. They're most likely going to be remote. So if you're outside of New York, we'd love for you to work with us. Just one thing to keep in mind, since the person who is going to be supervising the interns will be based in Eastern time, that your schedule and lifestyle is compatible with an Eastern time schedule.
Thank you so much for that, Alvi. Seems that our second question is to Ananya. And the question is, what advice do you have for a girl who is not sure how to get started as an advocate?
That's a great question. So I actually started with She's the First in high school. And I think maybe just join, if you want to join She's the First or whatever other group you're passionate about, I think it's important to keep an open mind, learn about like the issues that you care about, and then find a community or build one yourself that is also passionate about those issues. And I also think a support system is really important. Like when you surround yourself with people who care about it like you do, you can work with and bounce ideas off of. It's always really helpful as well.
Thank you so much for that, Ananya. And now question number 3, I guess all of us can answer this. We'll start with Alvi, I guess. But the question is, what should I read or listen to or watch to learn more about girls' education and girls' rights?
Honestly, there is so much material out there. But a place that you can start actually is, Nastasia, as you mentioned earlier, we launched our retrospective report earlier this year, and that's essentially a report reflecting on She's the First and what we've learned over the past 10 years. And you get to even learn more in depth of some of the things that we shared today during town hall. So that's a great place to understand girls' rights, our impact as She's the First, and our vision for the future.
How about you, Ananya? Do you have any recommendations on what somebody should read or listen to or watch if they want to learn more about girls' education and girls' rights?
I can't really think of anything at the moment, but I think it's important to speak to people with like different experiences. Like the thing that I love about being a council member is I can speak to girls with different experiences who have experienced barriers to their education. And I think it's really helped me better understand what it's like for them and become a better advocate in the process.
Yes, I totally agree with the both of you guys. Speaking of when Ananya said, it's great to for sure also have a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge and to get the knowledge from like a source that you know, like a friend or even a family member. Those are the best because they will really break things down for you step by step, and you can understand it more from a true perspective. Not sometimes media can be fake, but that's a great way to learn more about girls' rights and girls' education for sure. Our second to last question to Alvi is, how is COVID affecting She's the First girls outside of the US?
Nastasia, thank you for asking such an important question. Before I get to it, actually, I wanted to drop in another recommendation that I have for people who are more interested in learning about girls' rights. And what I wanted to reshare actually, is our Discover Your Power journal, which Ananya had already shared. But if you're a girl and you're trying to learn how to advocate for yourself and how to speak up for the things that you care about, it's a very simple self-guided journal that you can walk through and spend some time in reflecting on yourself and learning to answer that first question on how to ethically storytell, is to start with why it's important for yourself to why are you connected to gender equality and girls' rights. With that, actually, I want to bring in our Chief Programs Officer, Christen Brandt, to answer the question on COVID-19. She's really been on the forefront of talking to our partners and connecting with girls on how they're experiencing COVID and how it's impacting them. Thanks, Christen, for
Alvi.
joining us.
Yeah, I like that you just kind of like pull me out of your pocket
out of the
there.
dark.
Yeah. But it's a good question, and it's been a really frequent question that we've gotten lately, because obviously COVID is something that is occurring all around the world. And so what we've been seeing is that one of the biggest questions, one of the thorniest questions that pops up no matter where in the world a girl is living, is the question about what to do with school and after school programming. And when is it safe to bring girls together? Is it okay if we're in an outdoor setting? And in many cases, schools have been closed for the better part of a year. Many of them now around the world are starting to open or are starting and stopping. But this kind of basic question of what is safe has been one of the biggest ones. And it's not just because education is so important, although we know it is. It's also because we're seeing that the longer girls are out of school, the higher the rates are of child marriage, of girls needing to take on jobs to help support at home and support the family. We are starting to see some increased numbers in teenage pregnancy rates globally. And so those are real issues that the girls' rights kind of space and coalition of organizations really has to deal with. And just getting girls back into school, of course, isn't going to mitigate all of those effects that we're starting to see have popped up over the last year. So a big question right now facing the girls' rights space is actually what is going to happen, and what are we going to be looking at for risk factors for girls over the course of the next year, 2 years, 5 years. And really starting to get an understanding of how much this has set us back, because again, it's not just the academics that girls need to get caught up in. It's that so many of them have faced increased risks in this year out of school. So in many ways, we're still waiting to really fully understand what it is that what the full extent of the picture is. But in the meantime, it is grassroots organizations who have been working to make sure that girls are in touch with mentors or in touch with teachers, that they have education packets, that there's that line of support and as much of a safety net as is possible when you're not seeing someone every day, so that we can make sure that girls everywhere are kept as safe as possible in the meantime. Thanks for that question. And I'll pop back into my pocket.
Thank you so much for that, Christen. Thank you. I think we have time for 2 more questions. The second to last question is, how long are the terms for the Girls Advisory Council and Youth Ambassadors?
Great question. So our youth ambassadors will be serving 1 entire year, and that year kicks off July 2021 and ends in June 2022. For our Girls Advisory Council, we're hoping in 2 years to move to a calendar year schedule. So that means January to December, sorry. So if you're applying this year to be part of the Girls Advisory Council, you'd be signing on for 1.5 years, starting in July 2021 and ending in December 2022. But going forward after that, we would have a 1-year commitment.
Got it. Thank you so much. And our last question for tonight is, what is one simple action that I could take today to support She's the First? We can start with Ananya, I guess.
So you can actually just like tell people that you care about, that are close to you, and maybe tell them why you care about She's the First and why they should get involved. Because I think it's easier when you tell people from the heart, like Alvi was speaking before. Don't tell them about like the problems. Tell them why you care, and they'll care too if they care about you.
That's a great answer. And to build on Ananya, what you shared was something that you can share while you're talking about your own story is sharing our post today. If you check out our Instagram, we actually shared some of the takeaways from this town hall in a post titled "Why We Stopped Sponsoring Girls." And it's really powerful, but it is it's a easy and concise way to explain our approach to storytelling and working with girls and community-based organizations as partners, and hopefully can introduce more of your community to what we all work on together.
That was great. Yes, I was just going to add in really quick. What we love about She's the First is that it can connect so many girls globally, because at the end of the day, we were all young, beautiful, empowered women. And even though we have different stories and different backgrounds, we all have the same purpose, the same morals. We have the same just being empowering women. So it's just something to keep in mind about She's the First, how we're all connected. We're all connected. Women will always have each other's backs. We're all connected all the time. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and giving your time and attention to this mission to make sure that girls everywhere are educated, respected, and heard. We hope you've learned something new for your own journey as an advocate. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out at any time on Instagram at She's the First, or join us at community.she'sthefirst.org. Have a great night, everybody.